Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 756 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Friday, so you know exactly what that means. We're here to break down not 2, not 4, but 6 hours of AEW television. That's right, AEW decided to air Collision on Thursday immediately after Dynamite on Wednesday. So rather than wait an entire week to discuss that show, we decided to put a little pause in our programming after taping 2 episodes basically in a 16-hour span. So here we are on Friday breaking down 6 hours of AEW. And don't forget, we will be back Saturday late afternoon, early evening with your WWE Night of Champions Instant Analysis podcast. And of course, because that's coming out Saturday, that means on Tuesday, we had your WWE Night of Champions Ultimate Preview. We came back Wednesday with an NXT episode that also featured a one-on-one interview with none other than TNA legend and WWE producer Abyss. So 2 shows already in your podcast feed, obviously in the middle of taping the 3rd, and the 4th coming before the week is out. Late Saturday afternoon, early Saturday evening. As we get into this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, I would be remiss if I did not remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You will get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. We will do our best to read them on the air. We have a bunch, by the way, that we're going to be mentioning during Night of Champions and on the WWE show afterward. But whether it's WWE, NXT, AEW, send in your questions and comments. Again, we will do our best to read them. And don't forget, this weekend on Saturday specifically, we will have pre- and post-show polls around WWE Night of Champions, and we would greatly appreciate your input because those factor in to our instant analysis grades at the end of the program. But we're not here to talk WWE. We're here to talk AEW. And I had 2 real interesting notes overall, just overarching the 6 hours of programming that I just watched over the last 2 days. The pyro at the start of Dynamite on Wednesday was absolutely wild. I don't know if it was just mic'd up differently. It seemed like Cody Rhodes level pyro times 2, which was kind of odd because they only showed it visually from the side stage. So if you're going to spend all that money for pyro, I want to see it straight on, right in front of the camera. Pretty crazy. Collision this week seemingly got the same amount of pyro. Now, it was taped in the same venue and the same set, I think the same night. So I guess they just double loaded. I'm still partial to pyro when wrestling shows begin. Like the whole cold open of, the wrestlers or superstars kind of walking in with their luggage and treating it like sports. I get it. But when you run that pyro and you, especially if you do it after a theme and a full, start to the show, it just jacks up the energy level. And whoever comes out first always gets a major pop. And when you don't do that and people are just kind of walking in and then you play someone's music, it's like, oh, I guess the show's starting now. You feel different as a fan, definitely in person, but even watching at home. So I really wish WWE would bring that back. And I love that AEW does that. 6 of 18 matches across these 6 hours of TV were storyline relevant. That included 2 random 4-ways for spots in casino gauntlet matches and a couple others in which I was quite lax in considering them relevant. So 33%, but that does include a double dose of Collision, which drags the average down naturally. It's not what I'm looking for, though, when I'm investing my time in watching matches, no matter how you slice it. AEW had plenty of storytelling on TV this week, both Dynamite and the Collisions. But when it came to the matches, it was just kind of like, oh, here's people wrestling. And I want all of that. I want it engaged both ways. It really shouldn't be that hard to do, especially just over 2 weeks out now from AEW All in Texas. But let's go through the breakdown. As always, we're going to go storyline by storyline, not show by show. So we're going to mix together Collision from last week, Dynamite, and Collision from this week. Collision last week, Jon Moxley beat AR Fox. Another example of one of those random matches right off the top. He beat him via referee stoppage in 6 minutes. Why? Cannot tell you why. Mox then cut a promo on Hangman Page saying he's pissed away his gifts and opportunities for years, and he's sick of waiting for that crybaby to get his act together. He promised to run him out of wrestling for good. The promo was relatively unremarkable, as was the match. My most significant takeaway was that Mox is ripped as hell. This dude has gotten into incredible shape recently. Seems happy, healthy, fully recovered. All of that, of course, for him personally is great news. On Collision last week, Chris Statlander backstage complained about not wrestling recently. Wheeler Yuta said he told her so. That led Chris Statlander to put on a mean mug, yell at him, and lightly shove him into a wall. Then she turned, bumped into Mox, dropped her phone, and she started fake shaking as if she was scared of him. Mox said not to let anyone tell her what she's worth. Fans chanted, "We can't hear you," so I just presume the audio didn't work in the arena. I'm into Chris getting involved with the Death Riders here, and I like Stat in general. I always have, but her acting was straight up awful during this segment. The anger at Yuta was laughable, and the shaking at Mox, it was just ridiculous. But again, I'm intrigued by the storyline. I just really thought she did a poor job when normally she does not do a poor job. On Dynamite, Mox cut a promo from a staircase saying Hangman continues to let stuff slip through his fingers like sand. He said Page is afraid to become the hero that fans need him to be, which is why he and his crybaby emo crap makes Mox sick to his stomach. Mox said Hangman is not who he pretends to be, and while he deals with all of his psychological issues, Mox will be tearing him down piece by piece in the ring to the point he will need to change his profession. This was easily Mox's best promo of 2025. Dare I say, the entire Death Riders run. The further and further away AEW gets from all of that bullshit, like the way the faction and the storyline started, the better it is getting, which is ironic because it's about to all come to a head in just a couple of weeks. On Dynamite, Hangman beat the Beast Mortos in the main event of the show. I know Page is Page, but having a meaningless 9-minute match end your show with the challenger, let's say, being a guy who always loses, it's ridiculous. You should be building toward your main event match, getting people really excited for it at the end of the show, not just putting something out there. And they're certainly not beating the allegations that Mortos is being platformed due to his relationship with Mercedes Mone. I obviously don't necessarily believe that to be the case. I'm just saying this booking of Mortos being in this main event for no reason, it kind of falls right along those lines. Hangman won with his standard sequence. The lights went out after the bell, turning back on with the Bucks holding Page by the arms, hitting EVP trigger. Hangman just sat there yelling and let them do it to him, which was really silly. Death Riders then came out. No, Claudio Castagnoli wasn't there. Obviously, Pac wasn't there. Gabe Kidd wasn't there either, but everyone else was. Mox choked Page with a chain. The Ops finally ran out, but they were completely ineffective, I guess because of the numbers game. It was 3-on-4, so they couldn't get into the ring. 3-on-5, so they couldn't get into the ring. So Will Ospreay runs out individually, no weapons, and everyone just runs out of the ring. This was so poorly booked, okay? A good 4 minutes transpired between the lights going out and the Ops appearing. In that time, he took an EVP trigger that took 30 seconds and then got choked out for 3 minutes. Why were none of the baby faces at the ready? Even if they weren't at the ready, given how quickly Ospreay got out there for his match earlier in the show, we'll talk about that in a moment, how could they not have all gotten out there in 30 seconds? Either don't come out at all or come out immediately. This was patently ridiculous, and the crowd responded accordingly. It's another one of those segments where they're getting kind of hot and they're excited. They're thinking something major is going to happen. And then the Death Riders happens, and it's just, And that's what it's been throughout this entire storyline. On Collision last week, Swerve Strickland beat Shane Taylor. It seems like this STP crew keeps growing off television. I presume it's happening in Ring of Honor or something, but it's not a product I get to watch. On Dynamite, the Young Bucks bragged backstage about bumping a planned Swerve and Ospreay tag team match to the start of the show. There was a fun bit they did where Ospreay had to run out of the backstage area, still wrapping his wrist, putting his elbow pad on. I saw a clip of this online before I watched Dynamite, and I'm like, wow, this dude fully missed his entrance. That's so unprofessional. But it was actually really fun, and it was done purposefully because the Bucks moved up the match. Now, why Ospreay and Swerve fought Blake Christian and Lee Johnson, and why a match with those losers would take 10 minutes for them to win, that I cannot tell you. The Bucks watched this from the stage, which, by the way, was just a big screen like WWE. Interesting. That. Swerve challenged for All In as expected. Ospreay then chimed in, wanting to up the stakes with the Bucks, putting their EVP titles on the line since they've been doing more harm than good to AEW. Swerve then did Swerve Stomp onto like 5 security guards for no reason whatsoever. And Ospreay like threw a chair. The Bucks later suspended Swerve for a week without pay for putting hands on an AEW official. Kazuchika Okada then came in backstage, introduced his new friend, 3 dudes from Don Callis family. The Bucks said they hate Callis, but they all want Omega to hurt, and they all want to double strap Okada. They didn't answer the challenge. They didn't say they would take it. Okada and Konosuke Takeshita also stared down one another. This segment largely sucked, like critically, even if the crowd was hot for it. We knew the match was coming. And as I said last week, while I know it's going to be great in ring, I just don't care about the Bucks from a personal standpoint. Beyond that, this is a far lesser usage of Ospreay and Swerve than they deserve at a major show. When Ospreay made that stipulation request, I assumed the idea was the Bucks would just lose the EVP titles if they get defeated. But commentary made it sound like the power is up for grabs, meaning Ospreay and Swerve would become the EVPs if they win. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, why would the Bucks agree to put their titles on the line for no reason whatsoever? The faces want to fight them? Okay, we'll fight you. They want the EVP titles? No thanks. We're good. Like, why would they put them up? What is the motivation? Are they willing to leave AEW if they lose the match? Okay, then you put the EVP titles up. Are they willing to never challenge for the AEW World Championship again if they lose? Okay, maybe you would put the EVP titles up. But if they just want them on the line, there is zero reason right now for the Bucks to accept that. And I hope they don't, because it's ridiculous. I also have no clue why Ospreay and Swerve would want to be EVPs when they were just taking all this time talking about power corrupting. I'm sure there's an overall plan or they wouldn't have done this, but yeah, it's not the best. And the whole elite family thing backstage with the Callis family, they never explained why Okada was no longer with them and looking for other help from what I would consider to be less powerful people, given the elite are the EVPs of the company. So it was like, really, you're just going to throw that on screen and that's it, completely unexplained? Like, I'm glad they at least did it to acknowledge the fact that it was weird, but that doesn't make it any better. On Collision last week, Callis introduced Okada as the newest member of his family, except only 2 of the other 17 members were out there. Callis yelled through the camera at Omega that his greatest rival and hater have teamed up to beat him. He said Omega doesn't have any friends, having lost Callis and the Elite. He's alone in the world without even one person. So Mark Briscoe randomly comes out saying he wasn't Omega's only friend, when suddenly, out of nowhere, Kota Ibushi Kota, returned looking shredded as hell. He had a clunky back and forth with Josh Alexander before staring down Okada. They traded strikes. Neither sold even 10% before Ibushi kicked Okada and stood tall at the end. Weak action aside, because it was weak action, this was a great surprise. Ibushi's been out injured for an extended period, and the last time he was in AEW, he really looked like a shell of his former self. Ibushi getting Omega's back, it makes all the sense in the world. Though let's not forget, the family is so large, he's just one dude. I cannot imagine AEW doing a series of run-ins during Okada Omega 5, like I presume are planned for Mox and Hangman. And now that I think about it, because Okada has the Continental Championship, matches involving that title are not supposed to have anyone ringside anyway. So I'm not entirely sure why Ibushi needs to be involved here. And I'm not entirely sure, now that I say that, why Callis has been put into this feud. I'm furious that Okada has been saddled with Callis. I know I've said that on prior shows, but he did not need to be engaged in this storyline whatsoever. I'm sure they're going to put him on commentary, and I presume he's going to do something at some point during the match, but we don't need that. The attention has shifted from Okada Omega to Callis' standard repetitive yelling promos where he says Omega sucks and whoever he's now managing is the greatest ever. First it was Ospreay, then it was Takeshita, then it was Kyle Fletcher, and now it's Okada. The Callis of it all has, I don't want to say ruined it for me because I'm still really excited for Okada Omega 5, but it's lessened my excitement. Now, did I pop seeing Ibushi back? You bet your ass I did. He was one of my 3 favorite New Japan wrestlers, Ibushi, Tomohiro Ishii, Tetsuya Naito. Hopefully he is just with Omega for the build to this match. And then the Callis and Ibushi of it all, they go away. And we get Okada Omega unencumbered, and we just don't have to worry about this. On Dynamite, Ibushi beat Trent Beretta in 7 minutes. I gave this relevance credit since he's a member of the family, but he wasn't even one of the guys in the ring on Collision when Ibushi returned. If they had traded blows last Saturday, okay. But this was just random. Really, this match should have been Ibushi against Alexander because he's the one that Ibushi fought when he returned to TV. So doing this with Beretta, I really should take away the relevance credit, but I'm going to leave it because, again, it was only 30% anyway. Ibushi looked pretty good, all things considered. He took 2 nasty neck bumps as per usual and completely no-sold one of them as per usual. It's clear he's a shell of the guy that we saw going nuts in New Japan years ago, but he was probably knocking off some rust here. Oh, the referee also missed a 3.2 count that should have pinned Ibushi. He wound up winning with Kamigoye. Okada came out after the bell, and a title match was immediately announced for next week. Now, I know Ibushi's accolades, Silver King individually. Those of you who watch New Japan, you know his accolades as well. But what did he do in AEW to deserve a title shot against Okada? And why would he take one before his best friend is going after the same title in a scheduled match just 2 weeks away? It's just dumb creative, folks. It is. I forgot to mention, there was a video package earlier in the show that provided information for newer fans about the Ibushi-Omega relationship. Unfortunately, it was one of those 20-second deals where Excalibur speaks a mile a minute and rushes through the explanation. Better than nothing, sure. Paled in comparison to what was truly necessary. Could you really not have given this 90 seconds with all the New Japan footage at your disposal and all the story history that Okada and Omega have together? It's you're treating your fans like, oh, we're just going to do this to placate the people who are going to complain about it, rather than we're going to do this because we want to tell the story better and actually inform our audience. That really should not be a hard ask. Now, wrapping up this story, I will note commentary did seem to walk back the way they were talking about Omega a week ago. I believe Tony Schiavone said something like, Omega's out, but knowing Kenny, he will make it to All In, which is a much better way to frame it than basically no-selling the attack last week, saying, yeah, Omega's going to be at All In. Don't worry about the fact that he was spitting up a gallon of blood, from an elbow drop on a stretcher. Omega not being on TV, selling that devastation, that's been necessary. They had to do it after he coughed up that much blood. So I'm glad that is happening. But it's also kind of weird to not have him on TV building to Okada Omega 5, the second or third biggest match for the top show of the year. Hopefully he returns this Wednesday on Dynamite and we see him every single show on the way to All In. On Collision last week, Mercedes Mone cut a promo after the Mexico show holding all her titles. She said her CMLL championship win was just a preview of All In, calling herself iconic, which is better than being timeless. It was one of her better promos in AEW, despite being rather short. Toni Storm was later live for a promo of her own, still dressed like Carmen Sandiego in full color. Storm said she was disappointed that Mone sees her and the AEW title as just another trophy. She said, quote, I am not some other mother effer, which was obviously bleeped, and she demanded Mercedes best because she's the greatest of all time. Then Toni called herself a whore, saying she has to beat Mercedes, but Mone would have to kill her to win the title. This was an excellent promo from Storm. The first 3 quarters of it was absolute nails. The final quarter, unfortunately, dove back into all the really cheap sexual innuendos for pops and stuff like that. I know there was that video introduction before she basically became Carmen Sandiego, but I feel like this abrupt visual shift is not only random, but rather ill-fitting. Her character work has been so extensive over the last couple of years. Why would you make this switch seemingly willy-nilly? And why is she Carmen Sandiego exactly? It's not like Mercedes is hiding from her and Toni is searching far and wide to find her. In that context, it would make sense. Now, if I miss something to this end and there is something that ties this together, please let me know. Reach out to us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Email me, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. Tell me if I missed something because I want to get the record straight, but I just don't understand this. Anyway, like I said, it was mostly great work from Storm. On Dynamite, Mone attacked Storm backstage in the cold open, called her a stupid bitch, put her in the crossface. Hot start to the show. It made Mercedes look like a ruthless badass. Mina Shirakawa saved, so Mercedes threw a microphone at her, and she said, let the games begin, which didn't really make sense. Let the games begin. You guys have been brawling and fighting and talking shit for weeks. Would have preferred it to end with Mone just looking like a killer and getting rid of the rest of it. On Collision, Mone smashed some fake video reels with a bat, saying Storm is an act, a mark like all the fans, and she is a true star and a global champion. She said fuck like 3 different times just to match what Toni said on Dynamite, and she promised she would get the death sentence that she's seeking. That's 3 straight segments from Mercedes, including 2 promos, that she's absolutely nailed. It's a far cry from how she started in AEW, almost like she got acting lessons or something over the last couple of months. It's really weird. Storm later went right back to her typical promo shit. Shirakawa interrupted, making Storm promise not to get involved when she goes after the TBS title next week. This was unfortunately the worst of the segments by a mile. I'm okay with Mina getting the title match, even if it's a little bit silly because she lost to Toni 1 month ago, but she has won matches in AEW. And the TBS title is the mid-card title, so I really don't have a problem with her getting the match. It's just, again, injecting someone into this that doesn't need to be there. This is about Toni and Mercedes. The other storyline is about Okada and Omega. I don't need Callis. I don't need Ibushi. I don't need Mina Shirakawa here. Just let the people feuding actually feud. Plenty more from AEW to discuss, but I would be remiss if I did not remind you.
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every show, and exclusive news analysis every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show. We would greatly appreciate your financial support. I'll also remind you to please subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full-length audio episodes and full-length video interviews, all on YouTube at Getting Overcast. On Collision last week, Jet Speed beat Gates of Agony in a match that happened for reasons. 3 of the 4 guys wore red, which was confusing. Kevin Knight ultimately got the fall with his rotating frog splash. Tony Schiavone was straight up awful on commentary during this match. Any criticisms I throw out about Pat McAfee or Excalibur or anyone, they pale in comparison to how grating it is to listen to Schiavone call a match. He's awful. Some strong work bell to bell here. Obviously, the faces were winning, given their expected title match coming up. On Dynamite, we had Jet Speed against Ricochet and Fox. This was set up with Ricochet recognizing they aren't necessarily on the same side, he and Fox, but he thought he might be able to earn a spot in his crew if they team up, take down guys that have been bothering him. Fox put his hand out while thinking about it, but Ricochet grabbed it as if he was accepting the offer. After some consternation during the match, Ricochet dropped off the apron, leaving Fox on his own. This was all fine. I'm not totally sure why it was booked unless Fox is going to beat Ricochet in singles. If that happens, why would you do that? If it doesn't happen, why are you booking this at all? You know what I mean? Jet Speed cut a promo after the bell challenging for the tag team titles, saying Hurt Syndicate was holding them hostage and they belong back on their ways, except, they've never been champions, so they wouldn't be back on their ways. Kevin Knight started rapping MVP's old WWE entrance theme when the Syndicate attacked from behind and straight up destroyed them, like defenestrated them. MVP and MJF then brought out a table for an almighty spinebuster, one dude into the other. In back-to-back sentences, MVP begged someone legitimate to step up to them for the titles, and then he granted Jet Speed a title shot if they're able to literally stand up, which they had already done in the background. They stood up and left. So he says, no one is worthy of us. Jet Speed, okay, you get a shot. Back-to-back sentences. The tag team division in AEW is so weak right now that A, these guys are getting a title match on the biggest show of the year, and B, they're considered number 1 contenders after winning one normal 2-on-2 match against Gates of Agony, who everyone beats last Saturday, and another against a makeshift team here on Dynamite where one guy dropped out of the finish. So they beat Fox, who everyone beats, and Agony, who everyone beats. That's it. A pair of 2-on-2 wins. Not against FTR or the Bucks or Private Party or the Guns or anyone who's been champions or a top team in the division. It's ridiculous. MVP, by the way, is weaker than NXT's Ava when it comes to giving title matches. Every team that steps up to them, he goes, you're shit. You haven't deserved it. You've done nothing. They beat like the Outrunners or they beat, Gates of Agony, one win. And then he's like, okay, you can have a title match. This division is straight up dreadful. And it sucks because Syndicate is great. And if the division was great around them, it would actually be interesting. MJF got the mic afterward with MVP trying really hard to get some cheap, Seattle Supersonic seat.
Yeah, all your sports teams, they're all failures.
Well, they're really bad guys now because they cut down the city's sports team. That's what you do when you're a bad guy.
MJF promised to qualify for the Casino Gauntlet at All In, taking him one step closer to regaining the AEW title. Briscoe then came out saying the producers told him to enter because MJF was going too long. MJF called the fans poor and dirty and said Briscoe is a blue-collar bitch who should go back to his chicken ranch. Briscoe responded saying he has empathy for MJF being bullied as a kid. The fans chanted empathy, which was really funny. And then he suggested MJF was compensating for his insecurity by hanging out with the syndicate. Fans chanted kosher pickle, which Briscoe had said previously that was exceptional as a chant. And Bobby Lashley broke character given the insinuation of the size differential, the reason why MJF is hanging out with the type of men who are in Hurt Syndicate, let's say. It's unfortunate that the MJF of it all was so basic because Briscoe was fantastic here. Probably my favorite one of his promos in the last 12 to 18 months, maybe his AEW career. He's such an easy babyface to get behind. And when he speaks without all that manic bullshit, you can actually buy into him even further. Now, that said, the entire idea of the Casino Gauntlet is that there can theoretically be an endless number of people involved, right? So AEW, they held 4 ways to determine the number 1 entrance on Dynamite, which made complete sense. The longer you're in the match, the more time you have to win, since it's one fall to a finish. So you want to be first or second or third. However, MJF is now being involved in a qualifier. That makes 0 sense unless every single person who would be eligible for the gauntlet is also forced to win qualifiers. This dude is a former AEW champion and one of the top talents in the company. That's nonsensical creative for him to need to earn a spot in this match unless there's a dozen qualifiers for both the men and the women over the next few weeks, and I highly doubt that's going to be the case. What's even more interesting is that Briscoe was in the number 1 spot match for the men. If you were setting up MJF in that match as well, where Briscoe wins, but MJF doesn't take the fall, so it kind of begins their physical contact and that leads to a feud, that would be great. Except that match also happened on Dynamite and MJF was not involved in it. So again, it's just like they're not connecting the dots, and it's lack of logic. That is always what bothers me most. As an aside, MJF actually attacked Mystico during an MLW show on Thursday night. He was dressed in riot gear with a luchador mask on, promising to beat his ass and embarrass his country. MJF had a long run with MLW, so this was a homecoming of sorts, and it was a really cool moment for fans of that show, as well as a great way to continue the Mystico feud, which at this point seems like it's going to resolve itself at All In. On Collision this week, Fox confronted Ricochet in the parking lot, taking issue with getting ditched in the match. Agony attacked him from behind. They stood next to Ricochet, so he invited them to talk. It's legitimately hysterical that these guys are going to wind up with Ricochet coming out of the embassy and then the mogul embassy. It works because what Ricochet does need are heavies, and these guys deserve something more prominent. They're actually talented in the ring, but it's nevertheless funny as hell that they were just shifted from Swerve to Ricochet after doing nothing for an entire year. On Dynamite, Briscoe, Bandito, Takeshita, and Roderick Strong. This was for the number 1 spot in the Casino Gauntlet. Easily the AEW match of the week at 4 stars, A-. Bandito hit his flying sequence on Takeshita, who rolled outside. Strong then caught him flying off the top rope with a pump knee. And End of Heartache on the cover. Briscoe came in with Froggy Bow, got the win. Lots of fun and really a necessary win for Briscoe coming out of the prior confrontation with MJF. I could see MJF winning the gauntlet, then feuding with Briscoe coming out of All In before going after the title. That's if, of course, he is not in the match with Mystico at the show. Maybe Mystico costs MJF his qualifier, quote unquote, and that is what further leads to their match. I could definitely see that being the case. On Collision last week, the conglomeration, which now apparently includes Hologram for some reason, beat MXM Collection and Tyra Valkyrie in a mixed 6-person match. Johnny TV was also out there. So I guess Taya is just done with Deonna Purrazzo. Commentary explained that this was built on social media, which I trust. But given Hologram just suddenly became a faction member out of nowhere, and none of this had any real relevance in an ongoing story, I couldn't give it any credit in that regard. On Collision last week, Athena, Megan Bayne, Penelope Ford, and Thekla beat Thunder Rosa, Queen Aminata, and Tay J in the main event. This despite the faces being aligned and the heels completely being at odds. It was the only women's match on the show, and it was just randomly thrown together. Anna Jay watched as Thekla turned into a spider, backed up 10 paces, stood up, and then speared her. She wasn't woozy or wobbly. She just watched this happen. Took a spear. It was ridiculous. Billy Starks distracted as Athena hit Rosa in the back with her title to get the win. Red Velvet had thrown the title inside to help. Not even an AEW storyline factoring into the main event of Collision. This is why it's so tough to watch every single week. If I knew that Red Velvet was with Athena and Starks, then maybe that would have helped. But like, why are we running this? Why are we doing this on the main event of your show? Why is it even on AEW television when all these are Ring of Honor people? Not everyone in the match was Ring of Honor people, but most of what this story was about Ring of Honor. On Dynamite, Statlander beat Athena, Rose, and Willow for the number one spot in the women's Casino Gauntlet. It was really disappointing that Stat and Nightingale were thrown into the same match without any type of backstage segment or anything, given their extended history. Now, remembering what we said about Stat's involvement with Death Riders at the start of the show, Yuta and Marina Shafir interrupted late. Willow was in control at that time. Yuta actually took a swing at her, which was ridiculous, only to get pounced. Chris then beat her with Wednesday Night Fever. Looked like a really nasty landing, but it was tough to tell. You gotta believe Stat is joining them at or after All In at this point. And again, I remain intrigued by it all. I just wish they connected all the dots a little bit better. It should have been a big deal that Stat was fighting Nightingale, even if it wasn't one-on-one. On Collision, Bane squashed Vert Vixen, total waste of time. On Collision, Aminata beat Sky Blue. The heel botched a flying Meteora or splash or something to the outside. It looked absolutely awful. AEW then replayed it for some reason I could not understand. Aminata got her earring ripped off out of her lobe, which was bloody and disgusting afterward. Still very much into Aminata's finisher. Glad she got a win. Simultaneously annoyed, Blue came back and just remains a straight up loser. Julia Hart got in Queen's face afterward, only for Thekla to show up. Blue attacked from behind, and the heels beat her down 3-on-1 until TJ saved with weapons. Bane and Penelope Ford then stood on the stage watching them. I'm glad AEW is actually building a real women's tag team division. At least it's doing so as it prepares to introduce the title. I could see the inaugural champions being crowned at All In through a multi-team match. These three, you get another one involved. It could work. They would need to announce that next week, I think. Give it 2 weeks of build. It would make a lot of sense. But man, the way Sky Blue is booked is absolutely terrible. Throwing Thekla in with these two because she's kind of a little bit creepy when she has so much more star power than them combined, it's just kind of ridiculous. On Collision last week, FTR and Proto Shida beat Paragon, Bandito, and Daniel Garcia. Adam Cole cut a promo before the match, made me laugh. He's still signing off with "That is Undisputed" when their group name no longer includes Undisputed. This was the match of the night, but that's really not saying much. The Outrunner saved in a post-match attack, somehow sending 5 dudes scurrying out of the ring, despite them only being 2 people. This had no relevance to anything. On Dynamite, Cole cut a backstage promo saying he hated the family, so he would do an open challenge for the TNT title on Collision. Said Undisputed again. It's crazy how much his star power and presence have completely diminished over the last 2 years. Alexander answered that open challenge, and Cole beat him as expected because you obviously don't turn the title in an open challenge against a guy who is mostly lost since debuting as a new signee. And again, what did I talk about with Ibushi? It really should have been Alexander against Ibushi, and it should have been Beretta against Cole, if you had to have those 2 people involved. Cole lowered the boom, got 2 super kicks, retained the title. This was easily the best match on Collision, probably the second best on the 3 shows that I'm reviewing here. On Collision, Romero confronted Garcia backstage, saying he may hate the family, but they don't hate him. He correctly noted that Garcia is still palling around with Cole when he would never have gotten his back if the shoe was on the other foot. Romero's contention was that Garcia didn't have a real friend. Matt Menard was right there, took exception to that. The idea was that there's an open invitation to join the family waiting for him. It was actually pretty solid from Rocky. I just could not be any less interested in the Callis family at this juncture. It's too large, it's too unsuccessful, too involved with too many storylines, and feuds for a group that's just too unremarkable outside the top talent that are all stuck in these go-nowhere situations. And I was not trying to do Jay-Z's 22-2s right there, but I kind of did. On Collision, Fletcher beat Kyle O'Reilly in the main event. His knee got caught on the ropes at one point, allowing Kyle to drop a knee from the top. Then O'Reilly hit a running shotgun dropkick off the apron into Fletcher, who was sitting in a chair. Lance Archer attacked as Fletcher distracted the referee, with him ultimately hitting his signatures in a brainbuster for the win. This was on par, tied to his second best match of the 6 hours of TV this week, but it was random booking from the standpoint of there being no real reason for these specific 2 guys to fight. Archer attacked after the bell, so Paragon and Garcia saved immediately. Compare that with the shit I was talking about earlier with Hangman, where it took 4 minutes after him getting choked out. Notable from this match is both guys' names were Kyle, so fans had a lot of fun inserting that into typical wrestling chants like this is Kyle and stuff like that during the action. So it was hotter than it otherwise would have been, but it was well wrestled. On Collision, FTR and the Outrunners did a face-to-face in the ring. This opened the show for some reason I could not understand. FTR said everyone hates them because they stood up for themselves. After showing a package of their friendly moments, they said the Outrunners are jealous that FTR is levels above them, and they blew their title opportunity when they got it. The idea was that they had been exposed as a comedy act. People are laughing at them, not with them. The Outrunners didn't speak until the heels left the ring, which is really cowardly when you think about it. They said FTR may be right for their criticisms, but the fans will still believe in them because they were put on this earth to entertain and whoop FTR's asses. This led to a match next week. It was a brutal watch. Giving FTR a 12-minute rant session to open a primetime show is simply a terrible decision, especially for a mid-card feud that has no relevance involving a title or anything else important. It's going to be interesting to see if Adam Copeland is back ahead of All In, because a match of Cope and Daniel Garcia against FTR, that would make sense on a show like All In, but there's only 2 weeks of shows left. So it'd probably be last-minute build if that's the case. On Collision last week, Billy Gunn and Anthony Bowens got contentious with one another backstage for their relationship, not resulting in immediate success. This lasted about 30 seconds. It was probably the second best storytelling device on that entire episode behind Storm's promo. This week on Collision, Bowens said he'd have a gauntlet qualifying match on Wednesday for the number 2 spot. So is he MJF's opponent? Because it wasn't announced that he was trying to qualify for a certain spot. Are there 2 different qualifying matches? Is MJF's for the number 3 spot? Why are we assigning spots this way outside of number 1? Again, logic. Such an issue. On Collision last week, Learning Tree brawled with JD Drake and Anthony Henry around the ring. It wasn't a match, and frankly, it was an entire eye roll. The patriarchy then came out, and I realized Nick Wayne always looks like he's just taken an entire blunt to the head. The dude cannot open his eyes for shit. Christian Cage said the friction between them has created fire. He must have watched 22 Jump Street over the weekend. And they now want to go after the AEW tag team titles as father and son. Big Bill's major shot back was that Shayna Wayne is a slut, and Nick's father could be anyone because of that. So it looks like this is going to build into a feud that I presumed the heels would win. I will reiterate that this tag team division is absolutely in the mud if this is the only thing going. So on Collision, this week, we had Cage and Wayne beat Learning Tree. Shayna distracted for what could have been a 10 count to Nick. Christian dodged Bill into the ring post, then speared Brian Keith as he had Nick in the air. Wayne superkicked him and got the win. The booking of this match was really odd. The heels, who are presumably going to be getting a push as a team, they looked weak as hell the entire time. And then Keith loses with a superkick. Granted, it came after a spear, but that's neither of their finishers. It was pretty shitty, all things considered. The heels got into it with MVP backstage. MVP said they shouldn't bother with the Syndicate. MVP was wearing the same suit from Wednesday, couldn't bother to change, unlike everyone else. Christian called him a criminal, referring to his past, saying he'd go after the titles if he wants them. I guess a multi-team match might be on the horizon at All In. I thought it was just going to be jet speed, but maybe like Cage and Wayne after 1 week of teaming together, like actually in the ring going after the titles. They're going to be in the title match as well. Maybe they add a 3rd team or a 4th team. It's kind of weird. On Collision, Brody King and Templario beat Rocky Romero and Hechicero. Why? Because waste of time. And then on Collision, there was an introduction video package for Alex Windsor, who was Ospreay's significant other. She said she belongs in AEW because guess what, folks? That's where the best wrestle.
Are you fucking kidding me?
It was pretty decent other than that. She seems to have some personality behind her. Unfortunately, it was short. And other than like, I'm Alex Windsor and I'm English or British, we didn't really learn anything else about her. So if you're going to go ahead and do one of these segments, please make it more than I'm from Great Britain and I'm a great wrestler. Like, tell me why I should actually care about her. So look, that wraps up a special edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, only talking AEW. As mentioned, we will be back on Saturday with your WWE Night of Champions instant analysis in your feed right now. Don't miss it before the show. Your WWE Night of Champions ultimate preview and an NXT episode we taped on Wednesday that comes along with an exclusive interview one-on-one, the Silver King speaking with TNA legend and WWE producer Abyss. You definitely don't want to miss that. Next time we'll talk AEW is Thursday. Right here on the show, it will be a combined NXT and AEW episode as per usual. On the way out, allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full-length audio episodes, full-length video interviews, all of it on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis every week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. That is it for today's show. We'll be back with you on Saturday, and then again, as I said, next Thursday talking AEW. This is the Silver King signing off, leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.